The massive council chamber on Veltara Prime held representatives from over 300 alien species. At the center of the room, Ambassador Veltar stood behind a glowing podium. His ancient eyes had seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations across the galaxy. Today he carried news that made even his old heart heavy with worry. "Fellow council members," Veltar began, his voice carrying across the silent chamber, "I bring urgent news about a newly discovered species. They call themselves humans, and they come from a planet called Earth in the Outer Rim territories." The Zephyrian delegation sat in their designated area, their forearms crossed in boredom. General Krathmore, their military leader, barely looked up from his datapad. His species had conquered 12 star systems in the past century. What could possibly worry him about some unknown aliens from nowhere? Veltar continued, his voice growing more serious. "These humans have just discovered faster-than-light travel. Their technology is primitive compared to most of ours. Their weapons are basic projectile systems. Their ships are crude metal constructs. But there is something about them that deeply concerns me." A few representatives leaned forward with interest. The crystal beings from Andromeda chimed softly among themselves. The gas creatures from the nebula sector shifted their forms nervously. "In my studies of their history and culture, I have discovered something unique," Veltar said. "These humans have a trait that no other species in our records possesses. They simply do not know how to give up. Even when facing impossible odds, even when logic tells them they cannot win, they continue to fight." General Krathmore finally looked up from his pad. He let out a harsh laugh that echoed through the chamber. "Ambassador Veltar, with respect, you sound like an old being seeing monsters in shadows. What can these primitive humans do against advanced civilizations?" Several other military representatives nodded in agreement. The Velkari commander, whose species had fallen to the Zephyrians just 5 years ago, remained silent. He had learned not to question Zephyrian confidence. Veltar raised one of his long, thin arms. "Please, let me show you what I discovered." The room's central display activated, showing images and videos from Earth's history. This species has fought countless wars among themselves. They have faced plagues, natural disasters, and seemingly impossible challenges. In every case, when any reasonable species would surrender or flee, humans choose to fight. The display showed ancient human battles where small armies defeated much larger forces. It showed humans fighting in terrible conditions, in frozen wastelands and burning deserts. It showed them building cities after earthquakes destroyed them, returning to fight after devastating defeats. "Look at this battle." Veltar pointed to a scene of human soldiers defending a city. 300 human warriors held a mountain pass against an army of thousands. They knew they would die. They knew they could not win. Yet they fought anyway, and their sacrifice inspired their entire civilization. Krathmore stood up, his massive form towering over the other delegates. "These are just stories of primitives fighting with sticks and stones. What does this have to do with modern space warfare? My ships carry plasma cannons that can destroy an entire city. My soldiers wear armor that can stop any projectile weapon. These humans would surrender the moment they see our true power." "That is exactly what worries me," Veltar replied. "Every species we have encountered follows logical patterns. When faced with superior force, they calculate their chances and make reasonable decisions. The Velkari fought honorably but surrendered when defeat became certain. The Zorthak chose ritual suicide rather than face slavery. The crystal beings of Andromeda negotiated terms when they realized resistance was futile." He paused, letting his words sink in. "But humans do not follow these patterns. They have a saying: we will fight them on the beaches, we will fight them in the hills, we will never surrender. This is not bravado or empty boasting. Their entire history proves they mean exactly what they say." The chamber began to buzz with quiet conversations. Some representatives looked troubled by this news. Others, particularly the military ones, seemed skeptical. Krathmore activated his own display, showing the mighty Zephyrian fleet. Hundreds of sleek warships filled the screen, their dark hulls bristling with weapons. "Ambassador, your concerns are noted but unnecessary. The Zephyrian Empire has the most powerful military in this galaxy. We have conquered species far more advanced than these humans. Their primitive technology cannot possibly threaten us." He gestured to his fleet with obvious pride. "Each of my ships carries enough firepower to level a continent. My soldiers are trained from birth for war. My empire spans 12 star systems and controls the resources of 100 worlds. What can a few million humans on one backward planet do against such power?" Veltar's old face showed deep sadness. General, you are making the same mistake that many have made throughout history. You see their primitive technology and assume they are weak. You see their small numbers and think they are insignificant. But you are not seeing what makes them truly dangerous. And what would that be? Crathmore asked with obvious irritation. They learn, Veltar said simply, faster than any species we have ever encountered. When they face a superior enemy, they do not despair or surrender. They study, they adapt. They find ways to turn their weaknesses into strengths. And they never ever stop fighting. The old ambassador pulled up more images from human history. They have taken technologies meant for peace and turned them into weapons. They have used their own weaknesses as tactical advantages. They have convinced enemies to become allies and turned defeats into victories. Most importantly, they inspire absolute loyalty in those who fight beside them. Loyalty can be broken, Crathmore replied dismissively. Fear is a much more reliable motivator. Not with humans, Veltar said quietly. Fear makes them angry. Anger makes them dangerous. And dangerous humans are the most terrifying force this galaxy has ever seen. The council chamber fell silent as Veltar's words echoed through the room. Many representatives looked uncomfortable. They had built their civilizations on logical principles, reasonable negotiations, and calculated risks. The idea of a species that ignored all these sensible approaches was deeply disturbing. Crathmore looked around the room and saw the worried faces. He decided to end this discussion before it could spread more fear among the weaker species. Honored delegates, I appreciate Ambassador Veltar's concerns, but I believe he overestimates these humans. The Zephyrian Empire will soon expand into their territory. We will offer them the same choice we offer all new species. Serve the Empire willingly or be forced to serve it anyway. He stood to his full height, his forearms spread wide in a gesture of absolute confidence. Within one standard month, these humans will be working in our mining operations. Their planet will become another Zephyrian colony. Their so-called fighting spirit will be broken like all the others before them. The general's aide, Commander Zektul, nodded in agreement. He had served in many conquest campaigns and had never seen the Zephyrian military fail. These humans would be no different from any other primitive species. Veltar made one final attempt to change their minds. General Crathmore, I have studied over 1,000 species in my lifetime. I have never issued a warning like this before. Please, I beg you to reconsider. Open diplomatic relations with the humans. Offer them partnership, not conquest. Learn from them instead of trying to enslave them. Crathmore was already walking toward the exit. Your caution is noted, Ambassador, but unnecessary. The Zephyrian Empire does not negotiate with primitives. We conquer them. As the Zephyrian delegation left the chamber, many other representatives began to whisper among themselves. Some wondered if they should warn the humans about the coming attack. Others began to make plans to stay far away from human space in the coming months. Veltar remained at his podium, watching the delegates file out of the chamber. He had done everything he could to prevent this disaster. Now he could only hope that his fears were wrong, though deep in his ancient heart he knew they were not. The Zephyrian war machine was about to meet a force it had never encountered before, and Veltar suspected that neither side would ever be the same again. 3 weeks after the council meeting, 50 Zephyrian warships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of human territory. General Crathmore stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominator, watching the primitive human settlements appear on his screens. He expected to see scattered colonies with basic defenses, easy targets for his overwhelming force. Instead, his sensors showed something impossible. Every human outpost, mining station, and colony ship had weapons pointed directly at his fleet. Somehow these primitive humans had detected his approach and prepared for battle. How did they know we were coming? Demanded Commander Zektul, staring at the tactical display in confusion. It does not matter, Crathmore replied, though he was also puzzled. They cannot hope to match our firepower. Open a communication channel to their largest settlement. On the main screen, a human face appeared. Captain Sarah Chen sat in what looked like a military command center, her uniform crisp and her expression calm. Behind her, human officers worked at primitive computer terminals, coordinating their defense. This is General Crathmore of the Zephyrian Empire, he announced in what he considered his most intimidating voice. You will surrender immediately and prepare to serve the Empire. Resist, and your species will be enslaved by force. You have 1 standard hour to respond. Captain Chen leaned back in her chair and smiled. It was not the expression of fear that Crathmore expected. "General, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Space Force. I'm afraid I have some bad news for you. We don't know the meaning of surrender, but we'd be happy to teach you the meaning of something we humans call messing with the wrong species." Crathmore blinked in surprise. No species had ever responded to his surrender demand with humor. "Captain, you seem to misunderstand your situation. I have 50 warships armed with plasma weapons. You have a handful of metal containers with primitive projectile launchers. Mathematics should make your choice obvious." "Mathematics never was my best subject," Chen replied cheerfully. "But I've always been good at creative problem solving. How about we skip the threats and get right to the part where you learn why the Galactic Council warned you about us?" The communication ended abruptly. Crathmore stared at the blank screen in amazement. Had a primitive species just declared war on the Zephyrian Empire? "Sir," reported his weapons officer, "the humans are moving into attack formation. Their ships are unusual." The tactical display showed human vessels unlike anything in Zephyrian military databases. Instead of the sleek warships that most civilizations built, human ships looked like they had been assembled from mining equipment, cargo haulers, and construction tools. They were ugly, boxy, and covered with strange additions that served no obvious purpose. "They call those warships?" Crathmore laughed. "Begin the attack. Target their largest vessels first." The first exchange of fire shattered every assumption the Zephyrians had about space combat. Their plasma weapons struck human ships and did terrible damage. But the humans did not retreat or surrender. Instead, they did something no civilized species would consider. They kept fighting. A human cargo hauler, its hull torn open and burning, aimed itself directly at a Zephyrian cruiser and accelerated to ramming speed. The Zephyrian captain tried to destroy it before impact, but the human ship had been modified with extra armor around the engines. It struck the cruiser and both ships exploded in a brilliant flash. "They are ramming our vessels," Zechtel shouted in disbelief. "What kind of insane tactic is that?" "A human one," Crathmore muttered, beginning to understand Veltar's warnings. Across the battlefield, human ships employed tactics that defied military logic. Damaged vessels ejected their crews in makeshift spacesuits, who then used personal thrusters to board Zephyrian ships carrying improvised explosives. Mining ships modified their drilling equipment into crude but effective weapons. Construction vessels used their cargo arms to grab Zephyrian fighters and crush them. Captain Chen's ship, the UES Defiance, had lost half its weapons but continued to fight. When Zephyrian boarding parties tried to capture it, they found that the humans had turned their own ship into a trap. Every corridor was mined, every room was a potential ambush point, and the human crew fought with a ferocity that shocked the veteran Zephyrian soldiers. "They booby-trapped their own ship," reported one boarding party leader. "The humans are fighting in their engine room while it's on fire. One of them detonated a grenade rather than be captured." Commander Zechtel watched his tactical display with growing horror. The Zephyrian fleet was winning, but not in any way he recognized. For every human ship destroyed, at least one Zephyrian vessel was damaged or crippled. The humans seemed to view their own lives as just another weapon to be used against the enemy. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from Captain Chen," reported the communications officer. Chen's face appeared on screen again. Behind her, sparks flew from damaged systems and smoke filled the air, but she looked as calm as before. "General, I thought you might like to know what we've learned about your species in the last hour." "What could you possibly learn?" Crathmore demanded. "Well, your ships are more advanced than ours, but they're not built for the kind of fighting we do. Your plasma weapons are powerful, but they have a 2-second charge time we can exploit. Your armor is strong against energy weapons, but weak against kinetic impacts. And most importantly, your soldiers have never fought anyone crazy enough to turn their own ship into a weapon." Chen gestured to someone off-screen, and the UES Defiance began accelerating toward the Dominator. "You wanted to know about human mathematics, General? Here's a simple equation. One human ship plus one Zephyrian flagship equals a very big explosion." Crathmore realized with horror that Chen intended to ram his ship with her damaged vessel. "Destroy that ship! All weapons fire!" The Dominator's plasma cannons fired repeatedly, tearing chunks from the approaching human ship. But Chen had used the battle to study Zephyrian tactics. The Defiance weaved and rolled, using debris from destroyed ships as cover. Its engines, designed for hauling massive cargo loads, had been modified for maximum acceleration. General, Chen said calmly as her ship approached. I want you to send a message to your empire. Tell them that Earth remembers who its friends are, and we never forget our enemies. At the last moment, the Defiance changed course and struck a Zephyrian battlecruiser instead of the flagship. The explosion lit up space like a small star. Chen had sacrificed her ship and crew to destroy one of the most powerful vessels in the Zephyrian fleet. The battle continued for 3 more hours. When it finally ended, the human settlement was destroyed, but the Zephyrian fleet was crippled. 27 warships had been destroyed or damaged beyond repair. Thousands of Zephyrian soldiers were dead or missing. Crathmore stood on his damaged bridge, staring at the wreckage floating in space. His fleet had won, but it felt like defeat. No enemy had ever hurt the Zephyrian military so badly, and according to his intelligence reports, this was just one small human outpost. Sir, Zektul said quietly, we are receiving communications from the other human colonies. They all know about the battle. They are mobilizing for war. How many human colonies are there? Crathmore asked. Our estimates suggest approximately 500 settlements across 50 star systems, sir. Crathmore closed his eyes. If one small human outpost could do this much damage to his fleet, what would 500 colonies do when they were fully prepared for war? Send a message to High Command, he ordered. Request immediate reinforcements. Tell them the humans are not what we expected. What should I tell them about the enemy, sir? Crathmore looked at the tactical display showing the positions where human ships had made their final stands. Every marker represented a crew that had chosen death over surrender, a ship that had become a weapon, a species that fought like nothing he had ever encountered. Tell them, he said slowly, that Ambassador Veltar was right. Tell them we have found a species that does not know how to lose, and tell them we may have made a terrible mistake. As the damaged Zephyrian fleet limped away from the battlefield, emergency signals raced through human space faster than the speed of light. On Earth, in the lunar colonies, on mining stations in the asteroid belt, and on settlements scattered across the galaxy, humans received the same message. Earth was at war. The response was immediate and unanimous. Every human colony, every mining operation, every research station, and every cargo hauler began preparing for battle. They had been attacked by aliens who wanted to enslave them. The aliens had just learned something important about humanity. When humans are backed into a corner, they do not surrender. They fight back, and they fight to win. The news of the attack on Proxima Station spread through human space like wildfire. Within hours, every human settlement received the same devastating message. Aliens had attacked without warning, demanding surrender and slavery. Captain Chen and her crew were dead, along with 3,000 colonists who had never hurt anyone. On Earth, President Martinez stood before an emergency session of the United Nations. Her face was grim as she delivered news that changed everything. Fellow humans, we are no longer alone in the universe, and we are at war. The response was unlike anything in human history. Within days, every human colony, mining station, research outpost, and cargo ship became part of the war effort. Scientists abandoned peaceful research to design weapons. Children volunteered for military training. Corporate executives liquidated entire companies to fund the defense of humanity. Dr. Marcus Webb had spent his life studying how humans might adapt to alien environments. Now he sat in a military laboratory, working 18-hour days to turn his research into weapons. His team had captured samples of Zephyrian biology from the Proxima battle. What they discovered gave them hope. The aliens breathe a nitrogen-oxygen mix like we do, he explained to General Harrison, Earth's military commander. But their cellular structure is different. We can design biological weapons that will only affect them. How long do you need? Harrison asked. 6 weeks for the first prototype. 3 months for mass production. You have whatever resources you need. Money is no object. The survival of our species depends on this. Across human space, similar conversations were happening everywhere. On Titan Station, engineer Liu Wang was modifying mining equipment into ship-killer weapons. On the Mars colonies, factories that built farming equipment began producing armor and ammunition. In the asteroid belt, miners who had spent their lives digging for precious metals now dug tunnels and bunkers to hide weapons and supplies. The transformation amazed even humans themselves. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a plasma physicist, found herself working with weapons designers to create handheld energy weapons. We're taking their own technology and making it better, she told her team. If these aliens want a war, we'll give them one they'll never forget. Meanwhile, the Zephyrian High Command was learning that conquering humans was nothing like their previous wars. General Krathmore stood before a holographic council of his superiors, trying to explain why his mighty fleet was limping home with massive casualties. The humans fight like nothing we have ever encountered, he reported. They do not retreat when faced with superior firepower. They do not surrender when their position becomes hopeless. They turn every ship, every building, every piece of equipment into a weapon. High Admiral Vexithara, the supreme commander of Zephyrian forces, listened with growing irritation. General, you have the most powerful fleet in this galaxy. How can primitives with projectile weapons cause such damage? Because they do not fight like civilized beings, Krathmore replied. When we board their ships, they detonate explosives rather than be captured. When their vessels are crippled, they ram our ships instead of ejecting in escape pods. They have turned warfare into a form of mass suicide attack. Commander Zektul, who had survived the battle at Proxima, added his own observations. High Admiral, their tactics make no strategic sense, but they are effective. They seem to value destroying us more than preserving their own lives. Impossible, Vexthera said firmly. No species prioritizes the enemy's destruction over their own survival. It goes against every evolutionary instinct. With respect, High Admiral, Krathmore said carefully, evolution may work differently on their planet. We have studied their history. They have fought countless wars among themselves, often in conditions that should have killed them all. They seem to have evolved beyond normal survival instincts. The holographic council chamber fell silent. The idea of a species that could ignore its own survival instincts was deeply disturbing to the Zephyrian mind. Back in human space, the war effort was accelerating beyond all expectations. Earth's orbital shipyards, designed to build cargo haulers and passenger ships, were retooled in weeks to produce warships. The designs were crude but effective, combining human engineering with captured alien technology. Captain Maria Santos, one of the few survivors from Proxima Station, now commanded a new ship called the UES Vengeance. Her crew was a mix of former cargo pilots, mining engineers, and colonial militia. They were not professional soldiers, but they had something the Zephyrians could not understand: absolute determination to protect their homes and families. We're not trying to conquer anyone, Santos explained to her crew before their first mission. We're fighting for the right to exist as free humans. The aliens want to make us slaves. That's not acceptable. Her ship, like dozens of others, was designed around a simple principle: if you can't outfight the enemy, outsmart them. The Vengeance looked like a cargo hauler, complete with fake shipping containers. Hidden inside those containers were weapons that could destroy a Zephyrian battlecruiser. First major engagement after Proxima came when a Zephyrian patrol fleet encountered what they thought was a human cargo convoy. Commander Zektul, now leading his own squadron, expected an easy victory against unarmed transport ships. Instead, he walked into humanity's first coordinated trap. The cargo ships were warships in disguise. The asteroid field they were hiding in was actually a minefield, and the distress signal they were broadcasting was bait. "Sir, the human ships are transforming," reported his tactical officer in amazement. "The cargo containers are opening to reveal weapons systems." What followed was a perfect example of human tactical thinking. Instead of engaging in a direct battle they couldn't win, the humans had created a situation where Zephyrian superior technology meant nothing. Trapped in a minefield, surrounded by hidden weapons, the alien ships found themselves fighting at close range where human improvised weapons were most effective. The battle lasted only 20 minutes. When it was over, Zektul's squadron was completely destroyed except for his flagship, which the humans deliberately allowed to escape. "Why did they let us go?" asked his communications officer. Zektul stared at the tactical replay, beginning to understand something terrible. "Because they want us to report what happened. They want our command to know that humans can destroy our fleets without losing a single ship." He was right. Within hours, news of the defeat spread through the Zephyrian fleet. For the first time in their military history, Zephyrian ships had been completely outmaneuvered by a supposedly primitive enemy. But the psychological warfare was just beginning. Dr. James Okafor, a linguist who had been studying captured Zephyrian communications, made a discovery that changed everything. Many of the alien soldiers were not volunteers. They were conscripts from conquered worlds, forced to fight for an empire they secretly hated. "We can turn this to our advantage," he told General Harrison. "If we can communicate with these forced recruits, we might be able to convince them to switch sides." The result was Operation Exodus, a massive propaganda campaign broadcast throughout Zephyrian space. Using captured alien communication systems, humans began sending messages of hope and freedom to enemy ships. "Attention, soldiers of conquered worlds," the broadcasts began. "You are fighting for an empire that enslaved your people. Earth offers you a choice: continue serving your oppressors, or join us in fighting for freedom." The messages were broadcast in dozens of alien languages, accompanied by promises of asylum, medical care, and help in liberating their homeworlds. For many Zephyrian conscripts, it was the first time anyone had offered them hope. Commander Zektul found himself dealing with something he had never experienced: mutiny. Ships under his command began refusing orders. Entire crews demanded to know why they were fighting to enslave another species when their own people lived under Zephyrian oppression. "Sir," his second-in-command reported, "3 ships in our fleet have requested permission to defect to human forces. Their crews are from the Velkari worlds. They say they will not help conquer another species." The Zephyrian command structure, built on fear and absolute obedience, began to crack under the pressure of human psychological warfare. For the first time in generations, Zephyrian soldiers were questioning their orders and thinking about the morality of their actions. General Krathmore received daily reports of increasing desertions, mutinies, and equipment failures throughout his fleet. The humans had found a weakness that Zephyrian military doctrine had never considered: the conscience of their own soldiers. "How do we fight an enemy that turns our own people against us?" he asked his staff during a strategy meeting. "We cannot," admitted Zektul. "The humans offer our conscripts something we never have: hope. And hope, it seems, is more powerful than fear." As the war entered its 3rd month, both sides were learning hard lessons. The Zephyrians discovered that superior technology meant nothing against an enemy willing to sacrifice everything for freedom. The humans learned that their greatest weapon was not their ships or their courage, but their ability to inspire others to choose freedom over slavery. The galaxy was watching, and many species were beginning to ask themselves a dangerous question: if humans could resist the Zephyrian Empire, why couldn't they? 4 months into the war, humanity's greatest strength became clear: their ability to learn and adapt faster than any species the galaxy had ever seen. In laboratories, shipyards, and research stations across human space, the impossible was becoming routine. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in her laboratory on Mars Station, holding humanity's newest weapon. It looked like a simple rifle, but the energy readings on her instruments told a different story. "We've done it," she announced to her team. "Handheld plasma weapons with the same power output as Zephyrian ship-mounted systems." Her breakthrough came from studying captured alien technology and asking a simple question: why did the aliens make their weapons so large? The answer was that Zephyrian engineering focused on reliability over efficiency. Humans chose a different approach. "We miniaturized the plasma generation system by 40%, she explained to General Harrison during a video conference. "The weapons have a shorter operational life than alien versions, but they pack the same punch. Our soldiers can now match Zephyrian firepower man-to-man." Meanwhile, engineer Liu Wang was solving a different problem. Zephyrian ships were faster and more heavily armored than human vessels, making direct combat nearly impossible. His solution was brilliantly simple: don't fight fair. "We call them ghost ships," he said, gesturing to his latest creation in the shipyard orbiting Europa. "They're coated with adaptive metamaterials that can mimic the appearance of space debris, asteroids, or even empty space itself." The ghost ships were ugly, angular vessels that looked nothing like traditional spacecraft. But when their stealth systems activated, they became nearly invisible to Zephyrian sensors. A fleet of enemy ships could pass within kilometers of a ghost ship without detecting it. "The strategy is simple," Liu explained. "We let them pass, then hit them from behind when they're not expecting it. By the time they realize they're under attack, we've already crippled their engines and weapons." But humanity's most devastating breakthrough came from an unexpected source: empathy. Dr. James Okafor had been captured during a raid on a human supply convoy. Instead of being tortured or killed, He found himself in a Zephyrian prison ship under the guard of soldiers who seemed more miserable than threatening. Okafor did something that amazed his captors. He learned their language and began talking to them as individuals rather than enemies. What he discovered changed everything. "Guard Officer Yiltesh," he said one day to his primary jailer, "may I ask where you come from?" The young Zephyrian looked around nervously before answering. "The fourth moon of Velkar Prime. It was conquered when I was a child. Do you miss it?" "Every day," Yiltesh admitted. "But such thoughts are not permitted. I serve the Empire now." Over the following weeks, Okafor learned the personal stories of dozens of Zephyrian soldiers. Most were conscripts from conquered worlds, forced into military service under threat of their families being killed. They fought not from loyalty but from terror. "The Empire tells us that conquest brings peace," Yiltesh confided during one of their conversations. "But I have seen what happens to conquered worlds. The people become slaves. Their resources are stripped away, their cultures are destroyed." When Okafor was eventually rescued in a prisoner exchange, he brought intelligence that transformed human strategy. The Zephyrian Empire was not a unified force of loyal soldiers. It was a collection of enslaved peoples held together by fear and brutality. "We can break them apart from the inside," he reported to Earth Command, "not with weapons but with hope." The result was the most ambitious psychological warfare campaign in history. Using their new understanding of alien psychology, humans began broadcasting targeted messages to specific Zephyrian units, addressing soldiers by name and offering them something no one had ever given them: a choice. "Yiltesh of Velkar Prime," one broadcast began. "This message is for you. We know your story. We know you fight not from loyalty but from fear. Earth offers you asylum, medical care, and help in liberating your homeworld. You do not have to be a slave forever." The effect was immediate and devastating. Entire Zephyrian ships began defecting to human forces. Officers who had served the Empire for decades suddenly refused orders. The rigid hierarchy that held the Zephyrian military together started collapsing. Commander Zektul found himself commanding a fleet where half the soldiers no longer trusted their officers, and the other half were actively looking for ways to surrender to the humans. His own second-in-command, Yiltesh, had been transferred to his ship after the prison exchange. "Sir," Yiltesh said during a strategy meeting, "I must report something troubling." The human prisoner, Okafor, treated his guards with respect and kindness. He learned our names, asked about our families, shared stories of his own world. "This is not the behavior of a species that deserves enslavement. The humans are using psychological manipulation," Zektul replied, though his voice lacked conviction. "They are trying to weaken our resolve." "With respect, sir," Yiltesh continued, "they offered to help liberate my homeworld. No one has ever offered me such a thing. The Empire conquered my people and forced me to help conquer others. Why should I remain loyal to such a system?" Zektul had no answer. He was beginning to ask himself the same questions. The war was changing in ways that no military academy had prepared either side for. Human ships were getting better, faster, and more dangerous every week. But more importantly, human ideas were spreading through the Zephyrian fleet like a virus. Captain Maria Santos, now commanding a small fleet of ghost ships, intercepted a Zephyrian supply convoy in the outer system. Instead of destroying the ships immediately, she opened a communication channel. "Attention Zephyrian vessels," she broadcast. "This is Captain Santos of the Earth Defense Force. You are surrounded and outgunned, but we're not here to kill you. We're here to offer you a choice." The Zephyrian convoy commander, expecting demands for surrender, was confused by what came next. "Any ship that wishes to defect to human forces is welcome," Santos continued. "We will provide safe passage to human space, asylum for your crews, and support for your families. Any ship that wishes to return to Zephyrian space may do so, but without your cargo of weapons and supplies." 3 of the 5 Zephyrian ships immediately signaled their intention to defect. The remaining 2 dumped their cargo into space and fled. Santos had achieved a complete victory without firing a single shot. News of such incidents spread throughout both fleets. Human commanders began to see that mercy and generosity were more effective weapons than plasma cannons. Zephyrian soldiers began to realize that their supposed enemies were more humane than their own officers. Dr. Marcus Webb's biological weapons program had made remarkable progress, but when he presented his findings to Earth Command, he included an unexpected recommendation. We can deploy these weapons within 2 weeks, he reported.
They will be effective against Zephyrian physiology while leaving humans and most other species unharmed.
However, I recommend we do not use them. Why not? Asked General Harrison. Because winning through biological warfare would make us no better than our enemies, Webb replied. We're not fighting this war to become monsters. We're fighting to remain human. The decision to reject biological weapons, despite their potential effectiveness, sent a powerful message throughout the galaxy. Humans were willing to fight and die for their freedom, but they would not compromise their principles to achieve victory. This moral stance had an unexpected effect on the war. Zephyrian soldiers who had been taught that all species were equally brutal and selfish found themselves fighting an enemy that actively chose to limit its own weapons for ethical reasons. They could have poisoned our entire fleet, Yiltesh said to Zektul after learning about the biological weapons program. But they chose not to because it would be wrong. What kind of species does that? A species that might actually deserve to be free, Zektul admitted quietly. As the 4th month of the war ended, the balance of power was shifting in ways that neither side had anticipated. Human technology was rapidly approaching Zephyrian levels. Human tactics were proving superior in most engagements. But most importantly, human values were inspiring defections throughout the enemy fleet. The Zephyrian Empire, built on conquest and fear, was discovering that it could not defeat an enemy that fought with hope and offered freedom to all. The humans had found a way to turn the Empire's greatest strength, its vast collection of enslaved species, into its greatest weakness. General Crathmore received daily reports of ship defections, supply shortages, and troop mutinies. His mighty fleet was falling apart not from enemy fire, but from the simple human idea that all beings deserve to be free. How do we fight an enemy that makes our own soldiers want to join them? He asked his staff. No one had an answer. For the first time in Zephyrian history, they faced an opponent that was winning by inspiring others rather than conquering them. An inspiration they were learning was the most powerful weapon in the galaxy. 6 months after the first attack on human space, General Crathmore stood on the bridge of his flagship, preparing for what he believed would be the final battle of the war. His fleet, reduced to 30 ships after countless defections and defeats, approached Kepler Station, humanity's most remote outpost. Intelligence reports suggested the station was defended by only a few hundred humans with limited weapons. It should be an easy victory, something to restore Zephyrian confidence after months of humiliating defeats. Sir, reported Commander Zektul, we are detecting minimal defensive installations around the station. Sensors show approximately 300 human defenders and basic plasma weapons. Crathmore nodded grimly. Finally, a battle we can win. The Empire needs a victory to restore morale. He paused, thinking about the messages from High Command demanding results. Prepare for assault. No prisoners this time. The humans must learn the price of resistance. What Crathmore did not know was that Kepler Station had been evacuated weeks ago. The 300 defenders were actually elite human special forces volunteers led by Admiral Sarah Chen, sister of the captain who had died at Proxima Station. They had studied Zephyrian tactics for months and prepared the perfect trap. Admiral, reported Captain Torres, Chen's second in command, the Zephyrian fleet is approaching the outer perimeter. They're taking the bait perfectly. Chen stood in the station's command center, watching tactical displays that showed the enemy fleet moving into position exactly as predicted. Remember, people, this isn't about winning a battle. This is about ending a war. We're going to send a message that will make the Zephyrian Empire think twice before attacking anyone ever again. The station itself had been converted into something unprecedented, a massive weapon powered by its own fusion reactor. Human engineers had modified the reactor to create what they called a stellar lance, an artificial star that could destroy any ship within a light-minute radius. But the weapon came with a terrible price. Once activated, it would consume the station and everyone on it. Chen and her volunteers had accepted a suicide mission to save humanity and every other species threatened by Zephyrian expansion. Sir, Zektul reported as the fleet moved closer, something feels wrong about this. The humans have been clever in every previous engagement. Why would they make such an obvious target? Crathmore was too focused on achieving victory to listen to warnings. Because they are finally cornered with nowhere to run. Begin the attack. The first Zephyrian weapons struck Kepler Station's outer defenses, destroying shield generators and communications arrays exactly as expected. The human defenders responded with plasma weapons and kinetic projectiles, putting up fierce resistance but clearly outgunned. "We are winning," Crathmore announced to his fleet. "Press the attack. Destroy their weapons and prepare for boarding operations." But as the Zephyrian ships moved closer to deliver the final blow, Admiral Chen activated a communication system that broadcast to every ship in the enemy fleet. "General Crathmore," her voice echoed through Zephyrian bridges, "this is Admiral Sarah Chen of Earth Defense Command. You came here to finish what you started at Proxima Station, where you killed my sister and 3,000 innocent colonists." Crathmore's face appeared on Chen's main screen, showing confusion and growing alarm. "Admiral, you are beaten. Surrender now, and your people will be treated according to military law." Chen smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "General, I'm afraid you still don't understand what you're dealing with. We don't just fight to win battles. We fight to make sure our enemies never threaten innocent people again." "What are you talking about?" Crathmore demanded. "You're about to learn why the Galactic Council warned you about humans," Chen replied calmly. "We've turned this entire station into a weapon. In 30 seconds, our reactor will create an artificial star that will destroy every ship in this system, including ours." The tactical displays in Crathmore's fleet suddenly came alive with warnings. Energy readings from the station were climbing to impossible levels. The human defeat had been an elaborate trap designed to lure the entire Zephyrian fleet into range of a superweapon. "You're bluffing," Crathmore said, but his voice shook with uncertainty. "You would kill yourselves just to destroy us?" "General, you attacked our homes, killed our families, and tried to enslave our species," Chen answered. "Yes, we'll die to stop you. That's what humans do when something threatens everything we care about." Zektul stared at his sensors in horror. "Sir, the energy readings are real. They've actually turned their reactor into a bomb. The explosion will destroy everything within light minutes. Retreat!" Crathmore ordered. "All ships retreat immediately." "Too late," Chen said calmly. "Your ships are too close and moving too slowly. You have maybe 10 seconds before the reaction reaches critical mass." Crathmore realized the terrible truth. The humans had sacrificed themselves and their most remote outpost to eliminate his entire fleet. They were willing to commit mutual annihilation rather than accept defeat. "You're all insane," he transmitted desperately. "Your species will be extinct within minutes." "Maybe," Chen replied peacefully. "But we'll die free. And we'll take enough of you with us that your empire will think twice before attacking another innocent species. That's worth our lives." In the final moments before the station's reactor reached critical mass, something unprecedented happened. Yiltesh, the young Zephyrian officer who had been questioning the war, made a choice that changed everything. "Sir," he said to Zektul, "request permission to transmit to our fleet." "What? Why?" "To tell them the truth about what we've done here." Yiltesh activated the fleet communication system and broadcast on all channels. "Attention all Zephyrian vessels. This is Officer Yiltesh. The humans we are fighting have families, homes, and dreams just like we do. They are dying to protect their loved ones from slavery. We came here as conquerors, but they have shown us what true courage looks like." His voice carried across every ship in the fleet. "I will not be part of an empire that forces free people into slavery. When this battle ends, I am defecting to human space. Anyone who believes in freedom over conquest, join me." The response was immediate. Over half the Zephyrian fleet broadcast their intention to defect, rather than continue serving an empire built on oppression. Admiral Chen watched her tactical display as the reactor reached critical mass. "All human vessels," she broadcast one final time. "Remember that we died not for conquest or glory, but for the right of all beings to live free. Make sure the galaxy remembers what happened here." The explosion lit up space like a newborn star. Kepler Station, Admiral Chen's volunteers, and 16 Zephyrian warships were instantly vaporized. The remaining Zephyrian vessels, damaged but intact, limped away from the battlefield forever changed. General Crathmore survived, but his fleet was broken. Half his remaining ships had declared their intention to defect to human space. The other half were demanding answers about why they were fighting a war against people who would rather die than be enslaved. In his final transmission to Zephyrian High Command, Crathmore delivered a message that ended the war. "The humans are not like other species. They fight not just for victory, but for principles we do not understand. They will sacrifice everything to protect their freedom and the freedom of others. We cannot defeat an enemy that views death as preferable to surrender. He paused, looking at the tactical display showing the positions where human defenders had made their final stands. Ambassador Veltar was right. We should have listened. These humans are too dangerous to fight and too honorable to be enslaved. I recommend immediate withdrawal from all human space and a formal peace treaty. The Zephyrian High Command, faced with fleet-wide mutinies and a military disaster, agreed within hours. The war that was supposed to last days had ended in 6 months, with humanity victorious and the Zephyrian Empire forced to confront the moral bankruptcy of their conquest-based civilization. News of the battle at Kepler Station spread throughout the galaxy, faster than hyperspace communication. The story of humans who chose death over slavery, who turned their final defeat into ultimate victory, inspired species throughout the galaxy to question their own acceptance of Zephyrian rule. Within a year, the Zephyrian Empire faced rebellions on dozens of worlds. The example of human resistance had shown enslaved peoples that even the most powerful oppressor could be defeated by those willing to sacrifice everything for freedom. Ambassador Veltar, the ancient being who had warned against attacking humanity, delivered a final address to the Galactic Council. The humans have taught us something we had forgotten. Freedom is not something that can be granted or taken away by the powerful. It is a right that exists in the hearts of all thinking beings, and those who try to steal it from others will eventually face the consequences of their actions. Earth's first ambassador to the Galactic Council was Dr. Sarah Chen, Admiral Chen's youngest sister and a former xenobiologist turned diplomat. In her inaugural address, she spoke words that became the foundation of a new galactic order. Humanity did not seek this war. We wanted to join the galactic community as equals, to share knowledge and friendship with all species. That offer still stands. We will be friends to any who offer friendship,